My name is Jen Ahrens, and I'm a youth worker in San Francisco. Now, when they asked me to do the heroes thing, not really sure about it, so I went to my youth group and said, do you think I'm a hero? And when they stopped laughing, they said, wait, are you serious? So most of my youth group don't really consider me a hero, but if I was to ask them, and they're all standing in this line, have I made any of you cry? Raise your hand if I've made you cry. If you're in the room and I've made you cry, raise your hand. Yeah, so a lot of people, I'm not really a hero, and I don't really feel I'm a hero, and I don't want you to get me the wrong impression of me, because I'm fairly confident. As Michael Collins says, people stand in line to buy tickets to the Jen Ahrens show. Rich Bosenko and I were actually talking about how tonight there's tickets, they're going for about $50 if you want to hang out with me and Rich tonight, because we're so funny. And we enjoy doing things, but a hero is what I'm not. And these pictures up here that you are seeing, if you can kind of tell what they are, they're pictures of my kids. The kids, the ministry that I get to serve in. And I really struggled with getting the words to talk about today, because I don't think I'm a hero. And trust me, if you know me, you know that I can talk anytime, anywhere about anything. But to talk about the fact that I'm a hero, I don't really think that's true. And then my friend Peely said, Jen, you are a hero, because heroes aren't just superpowers and all that other stuff, but they help people in distress. And you choose to help people in distress. And I want to tell you how I came to help people in distress. Ever since I was a kid, a child of immigrants, I was convinced that God was calling me to be a missionary to Europe. I was convinced that's where God had planned for me, because the people in Europe understand me. They get me. No one here understands me. No one here gets me. I'm a little bit weird. I am. And I'm very thankful that I found the Salvation Army, because there's a bunch of us all together. And it's good, it's all good. So I was convinced that the Lord was calling me to be a missionary in Europe. I just knew it beyond a shadow of a doubt. But the Salvation Army wasn't so convinced the Lord was calling me to be a missionary in Europe. So time after time, I was turned down. And finally, the last time I was turned down, I said, you know what, God, you're shutting a door. Give me a window. Give me anything. And right at that same time, I met the DYS from San Francisco. And he called me out here and he said, you need to come and work in San Francisco. Never wanted to move to California, because you're all evil and you're going to hell. I just want you to all know that. Was actually told, don't go to San Francisco. Everyone, they do coke in the chapel during the service. I was seriously told that by the Salvationists in the Central. Shh, shh. And I thought, we're better to go. So I came here, and I was having this interview, and as I was having this interview, we were talking about which chorus I should worship at. And I have a son, a single mom with a son, and this wonderful man said the one corps you don't want to worship at is the Tenderloin Corps. Someone was just shot right in front of the Corps building last week, and it's not safe for you and your kid to be there. A couple of weeks later, I had 2 job interviews. One was at the Tenderloin Corps, and one was another corps. I'm going to remain nameless. And the corps officer said to me from the other corps, come on, you really don't want to interview at Tenderloin. Where would you rather be? In beautiful coastal city, I'm not going to name, with the beautiful people doing something that you were made to do, teaching drama and music at this beautiful, beautiful corps along the coast in this gorgeous city, or with the prostitutes and drug addicts. And as soon as he said with the prostitutes and drug addicts, it was like God stepping out of this man and saying, this is where I have for you. And I didn't want to come, but there's freedom and obedience. And I came, and do you know what my job description was? It was awesome. My job description said, start programs for youth, which is a great job description. All I had was start programs for youth. It wasn't easy, because when I got to my corps, my youth had been through 4 youth workers in 2 years. Nobody stays in the Tenderloin. And they knew that this kind of obnoxious white woman from the Midwest would not stay either. It's been 7 years, just so you know. And it's not me. It's not me. It's the kids that you see up on this picture. Kids who, when I came to San Francisco, had never been to the ocean. I don't make this up. Our youth had never been to the ocean. They lived 2 miles from the Pacific Ocean, and they had not seen it. Kids who had never ordered from McDonald's by themselves. True story. Kids who had never been to a movie. It wasn't part of their culture. It wasn't part of who they are. Most of the kids who are in my program, we have a couple of programs at the Tenderloin Corps. One is a large after-school program and a youth program. Most of the kids in my neighborhood, there's 3,500 kids living in 8 blocks. Most of them live in single rooms, studio apartments, small studio apartments, with up to 3 to 5 people. I have a staff member who works for me who has lived in the same studio apartment since he was 11 years old, and at one point there were 7 people living in that studio apartment. That's the way we live in our neighborhood. My neighborhood is amazing, though. It is really easy to minister in my neighborhood. When I said yes to God, he opened the door. And it's no longer about sacrifice. It's about, I get the privilege and I get the honor to hang out with these kids every single day. I get the privilege and I get the honor to hang out with the moms, one of whom was the soccer coach for the national women's soccer team in Nepal. She's now working at the Burger King right below my Corps because she came to America for a better life for her kids. My parents came to America for a better life for me, and I get to give back to those same kids. I had no idea what I was doing when I got here. I am really good at drama. I just want to say that again. And I was thrown, just in case, you want to book me or anything. Anyway, so no, that's what my passion is. I love to do drama, and I was thrown into a Corps with a bunch of Southeast Asians who barely even, literally had a kid in my Corps. The only thing she ever said to me was, "I don't know." And she might have said it a little softer than that. She might have said, "I don't know." I scared all of my kids. Most of them didn't like talking to me, so everything that I knew how to do didn't work. But then I read a verse that Paul had written in 2 Corinthians, and it said, "When I am weak, you are strong." I completely sucked my first year. Every single thing that I could have done wrong, I did. And I'm still making tons of mistakes. But God is using me because I am willing to be used. God is using me because I was willing to say, what is there to do? And let me tell you how I started my programs. Number one, didn't know anybody in the community, so the first thing I did was start knocking on doors. What youth programs are needed in this neighborhood? That's all I did. What youth programs are needed in this neighborhood? And no one could really tell me. There was always these different answers. But I'm a mom, and I knew that my kids' school needed volunteers, so I started volunteering. And then kids just literally started following me home because they had no place to go after school. And I started doing homework with these kids. And then an agent, this is how good God is. Then an agency, I had 12, 15 kids at one point, and this just following me home from school because my son went to school and I was volunteering at the school and I gained trust. An agency came to me and said, if we were to give you a little bit of money, what would you do with it? And I said, I'd want to start an after-school program. And they said, okay, here's $100,000. After a year, we'll reevaluate to see if we can give you more. $100,000 for a year. It wasn't me going out. It was just me praying, God, I can't afford pencils anymore. That was literally my prayer. Because I was buying the pencils because our Corps didn't have the money for it. God is really, really good. God is really, really good. And even when we screw up, if we are faithful, he will bless us. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this. My Corps is just a melting pot of the world. At one point, we had kids in our after-school program from 5 different continents, speaking 29 languages from 37 countries. It's the coolest thing to worship at my Corps. But there's a couple of families that come to my after-school program, my day camp program, that are from Bosnia. And we are not ashamed to preach the gospel in our Corps, but we try really hard to be careful, to be sensitive to those other cultures. And the family from Bosnia came up to me and said, can we talk? And the kids had come home with a cross that they had made. And this family had to flee Bosnia because they were Muslim. And the mother came to me and said, we need to talk. The girls had literally seen their uncle killed before them by Christians because they were Muslim. And they said, I said, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. And the mother telling me with tears in her eyes, her brother being killed right in front of her young daughters. Could you be more sensitive to what my girls have been going through? And I said, I'm so sorry. And she said this to me: I don't trust Christians, but I trust you. I don't trust Christians, but I trust you, and I want my girls to be part of whatever you're doing. I'm humbled by that every single day of my life, because we don't represent Christianity. We represent Jesus.
Hi, my name is Rob Nolan. Hi. And I love the Salvation Army. I mean, I really do. Like everyone always says they love the Salvation Army, but I really love the Salvation Army. I mean, it's almost weird how much I love the Salvation Army. Check this out. I'll show you how much I love the Salvation Army. I love the smell of Navy polyester. I swear. I've got brass band music on my iPod. Yeah. You do? I think the stand-up, the stand-up tunic like Steve's wearing, I think that looks cool. I think that the women's uniform looks sexy. I do. I mean, I love blood and fire and fire volleys, and I love calling my church a corps and my pastor a captain, and and I like being, I love being call myself a soldier. But it goes a little even deeper than that. I mean, I love just what we're all about. I love our roots. I love where we came from, I love the fact that the guy that started this whole thing was a fighter. He fought to the very end, and he raised up an army of fighters. I love the fact that that the bonnet had to be invented to protect the head from thrown bricks, and that our forefathers wore spit and rotten eggs like medals of honor. I mean, I love the fact that we stand up for injustice like the general talked about, and we make a difference. I love the fact that we went to the worst of the worst, the poorest, the marginalized, the no one else would go to, and we lived among them, and we cared for them, and we served them, and we loved them like Jesus loved the poor. And I love the fact that we've done this all around the world. You know what I don't love? I don't love soldiers who sit around and gossip about each other and talk about what's wrong with the Salvation Army and complain about the Corps and complain about everything and don't do anything. You know what I hate even more than that? I hate seeing soldiers drop out or go somewhere else. I was a soldier like that, believe it or not. I used to sit around and complain and gossip and say what's wrong with the Army and what's wrong with the Corps and all that, and I came to a point in my life where I had to make a decision. Was I going to just sit around and continue to do this and just be miserable and just complain and do nothing? Or was I going to leave the Salvation Army that I love so much and go to the big mega church down the street that was all exciting and happy? And I made a decision. And the decision that I made a choice. And the choice was to soldier up and get into the fight. Jen called me. She goes, this is a hero session. They're calling this a hero session. And I was like, man, I'm not, everyone's been saying that, we're all so humble, right? I'm not a hero. I don't like to be called a hero. But I am uncomfortable with being called a hero, being a hero session. Because, when a soldier goes to war, is he a hero? No, a soldier goes to war because that's his job. That's what he does. You don't call a soldier a hero because he goes to war. You call him a soldier because that's the definition of a soldier. He goes to war. I didn't do anything heroic. I'm just doing what anyone who calls himself a soldier, what anyone who calls himself a Christian is supposed to do. You know, as I go around, I look around and I see a whole bunch of soldiers out there in this territory that as I go around and I talk to people and friends and peers and whatever, and I see a whole lot of soldiers. They want to fight. They want to soldier up. They want to get out there and start making a difference. But for some reason, they don't know how. I don't know, they're unequipped or they're not sure or they're unable to get into that fight. And so that's why we started up Revolution Hawaii, my wife and I, because we wanted to help people get into that fight. We wanted to get them, to equip them and get them ready and put them on the front lines and get them in there and just start to get their nose bloodied or, just start there and make a difference, And so that's why we started this, is to help out. And that's why, if that makes me a hero, I don't know. But we want to make this difference because our hope is that this army would raise up, that this sleeping giant would awaken, and that we'd start to make a difference again like we used to do, that our stories wouldn't come from 150 years ago, but our stories would start coming every day. Every week we'd stand up at church and talk about what God has done in our Salvation Army, what God has done in our life, what God has done in our community, start to make a difference in the world, start this revolution that didn't begin 2 years ago with a fancy shirt. It didn't happen 150 years ago with William Booth. It happened 2,000 years ago on the cross on Calvary.
I was interviewing for a position as a divisional youth secretary, divisional youth officer, as they call it over there. And I was sitting there and they were showing us the house and the car and the job that they were going to give myself and the job that they were going to give my wife, and this was it. This is what we were in the Army for. This is what our heart was and what we wanted to do. And so we're very excited about this opportunity. And so they're showing us around and saying, look, we're going to fly you over here and we'll pay for your flights and we'll get your visas and we'll bring your family over and we're going to do all of these things. And everything seemed right, except it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it was what we were supposed to do. And so I came back and they said, we'll give you a week to decide if you want to do this. And then during that week I was sharing with somebody how I just it didn't feel like I thought it would feel. It was what we wanted to do, but it didn't feel right. And they said, Corey, what do you want to do? And I said, well, this is where our heart is and this is what we want to do as a family. And they said, Corey, we can't give you a job and we can't really pay you a lot of money, and we can't give you a car, and we can't pay for your transportation to come to Chattanooga. But if you want to move to Chattanooga, we have a homeless shelter. And it's a small little apartment you can move your family into. And we have 3 meals a day at a Salvation Army soup kitchen. And the thing that seemed like the wrong choice, that didn't look like the option we wanted to go down and we would go down, that we didn't really work hard for, was actually the right thing. And the one that looked so right was really the wrong choice for us. So perhaps you're in this room and you are a junior or a senior in high school, and May and June is coming and you're going to have to make a decision. And the decisions that look like the right choices, the right thing to do, what everybody's pushing you to decide, may not be the right choice. Or maybe you have finished up a couple of years of college and you have your associate's degree and you're having to make some decisions of what to do next, but you don't know where to go, and you're spending thousands of dollars on something that looks right, but maybe it's not the right choice. Or maybe you're like me and you grew up in the Army and you did all the things, and the Army has done so well in providing for you and essentially rolling out the red carpet for you to go to any position that you want, any corps that you want, any sort of right thing that you want to do, and it seems so good, and yet it's not the right choice. Maybe you're in that situation. So we said, okay, we'll go to Chattanooga, and we don't know how we'll do it, and we'll move in faith. It was the first time we had to move in faith because the Army had always provided it. So we moved to Chattanooga, and we moved into this homeless shelter with our children, and in this apartment above the homeless shelter with our children. And they said, hey, there are roughly 4,000 homeless in the Chattanooga area, so you have a big ground to cover. And they said, we have this building, and it was an old Salvation Army church building that was being used for storage. A 200-seat chapel being used for storage. It was filled with boxes and boxes and boxes of donations from America Online, of videos of You Got Mail and old modems and that sort of thing. And I thought, oh my God, God's been delivering messages to these guys and they've never received it. This building is just being used. So we cleared out this whole building and we opened up a cafe. And our cafe stays open all day. It stays open from 8 to 4. And then if it's really cold out at night, from 4 till the next morning, we let people just sleep on the floor, because somebody said one time that I read somewhere where they said, if you have 2 coats, you've stolen one from the poor. And I said, if the Salvation Army has a room that's being used for storage, then we're stealing it from the poor. So we opened up this cafe and we've begun to make friends. And we just hang out with people. There's no agenda, but it's just us living life together with the people at the cafe, because it seemed like the right thing to do. And we advocate on their behalf, and we help them get jobs, and we help them get out of housing. And now in this little apartment that we live in, there are a couple of extra rooms where we've begun to move people out of the woods of these tent cities that are in Chattanooga and move them into our community and move them into our house. And this has been a little uncomfortable for the Salvation Army. People have been there. They don't like the fact that people who were doing crack 4 weeks ago on the corner are now living in the Salvation Army offices. And we're sneaking them into all kinds of places, right, in the middle of the night. And so they'll wake up in the morning, there'll be remnants of where people used to be sleeping in the area commander's office or on his chair or wherever. We're just moving people everywhere. And so we have about 20 people living in our house right now, a small apartment that's smaller than this room, and we have them living around and living life together with us. And what we've seen, and this is what was promised. See, we answered a call. We answered the promise of Isaiah 61, and it's a verse that's often thrown around in the 614 communities. But in Isaiah 61, it just says, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me to preach good news to the poor. So that's what we did. And we went out and we brought good news, because the good news to them, Michael Collins, to the people who were sleeping outside, was, hey, I have a couch you can crash on. You know, it was the good news. That was good news to them. And he sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, and so we did it, and we proclaimed we proclaimed freedom to the captives and the release darkness from the prisoners. We just did this in our community. We comfort those who mourn. And as we've begun to do these things that are promised in Isaiah 61, to bring oil of joy instead of mourning, a garment of praise instead of spirit of despair, we're seeing people rise up. And Isaiah 61:4 has become true in our community, that they will rebuild the ruins and restore the places long devastated, and they will renew their cities. I don't have to restore the city. I don't have to restore the devastated places. The people that are raising up, that 4 weeks ago were standing on the corner buying crack, have started to do it. So you will be faced with many options if you grew up like me in the Army. All the right choices and all the good things that seem right may not be the right thing. So somebody comes along and says, hey, how about Revolution Hawaii? Or how about street level in Seattle? Or what about living with the poor in Vancouver? Well, how could that be right? How could I give up a year of my life just to do that when I should be going to college, or I should take this promotion, or I should do this job? But sometimes it's the right decision where God is leading. And as the general said, obedience is better than sacrifice. And so that's what we're trying to do in Chattanooga.